from the short break. Based on what we have done so far, you have clarified your academic identity, you have developed your research question, you have identified your research gap, you have built a strong literature review. Now it's time for us to move into the decisive phase. How exactly will you conduct this research? For us to be clear, a brilliant research idea with a weak methodology will not survive journal review, thesis defense, or academic scrutiny. So your methodology is what gives your research credibility, validity, and defensibility. So in this session, we move from what you want to study to how you will study it rigorously. Want to move from what you study to how you will study it rigorously. And we'll be looking at selecting an appropriate research design, justifying sampling strategies with clear reasoning, developing structured data collection instruments, applying ethical research standards, integrating AI tools, and producing a defensible draft methodology section. We also learn to understand the validity and reliability principles. So your research design and sampling strategy helps you to choose the right approach. So let's start with research design. What is a research design? This is the overall strategy, a blueprint that integrates all components of your study in a coherent, logical way. Study that connects your research questions, your data collection, your analysis to your conclusion. Your research design is not chosen randomly. It must be aligned with your research questions, and it must be aligned with your research objectives. So the purpose of your research design will be exploratory, descriptive, explanatory, or evaluative. The time frame for your research will be cross-sectional, that is 1 point, or longitudinal over a time. And the nature of data could be numbers and patterns, which is quantitative, or it could be meanings and experiences, which is qualitative. It could be a mixture of both, which is mixed method. So your research design is answered in these parts. It is your overall strategy. And you have to determine the purpose, the time frame, the nature of data. And you provide a bridge between your research questions, data collection, analysis, and conclusion. Types of research design. We have the quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method. The quantitative research design focuses on numbers, measurement, and statistical relationships. Numbers, measurement, and statistical relationships. So it tests hypotheses, measures variables, generalizes findings, using numbers. So what are the types? We have experimental design. This manipulates variables under controlled conditions. So you manipulate the variables and you test costs and effects. An example of such design is, does X intervention improve outcome of Y? Does S intervention improve outcome of Y? Here you have to manipulate the variables under controlled conditions. And it is an example of experimental design. We have the survey design, where you collect data from many participants using questionnaires. An example of this is, what is the relationship between X and Y? What is the relationship between X and Y? And you collect data from a large sample using structured questions. Another example of quantitative research design is correlational. This examines relationship between variables. You do not manipulate. The difference between these and experimental is that in experimental, you manipulate the variable. In correlational, you measure the variables and you establish the relationship between the variables without doing any form of manipulation. So these are examples of quantitative research design. For qualitative research design, it focuses on meaning, experiences, and depth. So you explore the meaning, experience, and social phenomena in depth. The types of qualitative research include case study. Here you do an in-depth analysis of a specific case, unit, or instance. You do an in-depth analysis, in-depth examination of a specific unit, specific instance, or a specific case. Another example of qualitative research is phenomenology. Phenomenology explores lived experiences of individuals. And a third example is ethnography. This studies cultures and social groups. It studies cultures and social groups. Then the mixed method combines both quantitative and qualitative. It can be sequential, that is, you do quantitative, then you do qualitative, or you do qualitative before you do quantitative in sequential order. Or it can be concurrent, where you collect both data types simultaneously, that is, the qualitative data and the quantitative data are collected simultaneously, and you analyze them independent of one another simultaneously. So those are the types of research design. And for people in sciences, already you know that most of our research is quantitative. Maybe before we leave these parts, I have to say that students often choose, or researchers choose, a design they like. That is the wrong way of choosing the research design. The right way to do is a design that fits the question. Your research question is very, very important. It determines the kind of literature review you do. It also determines the methodology you use. And your research design will be based on what fits your question. Also, if your design does not logically answer your research question, then it is the wrong design. If your research design does not logically answer the research question, it is the wrong design. So let's move to sampling strategies. We have two types of sampling strategies: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. But first, what is sampling? Sampling is selecting a subset of the population to study, from which findings may be drawn or generalized. So if you select a portion of a population to study, and this is done because studying everyone is often impossible, very expensive, and time-consuming. So because you cannot study everybody in the population, you have to choose a subset to study. And that is where sampling comes in. And like we said, the types of samplings could be probability sampling or non-probability sampling. For the probability sampling, every individual has a known chance of selection. For the probability sampling, every individual has a known chance of selection. And the types of probability samplings are simple random sampling. That is, every member of the population has equal chance of selection. It is the most rigorous and best for homogeneous population. If you have a homogeneous population that you are dealing with, the best sampling method is the random sampling method. Because since the population is homogeneous, then choosing one over the other does not really matter. Everyone has equal chance of being chosen. We have stratified sampling. Here, population is divided into groups. If, for instance, you want to look, you want to do epidemiological studies in a group, in a community, if you do simple random sampling and just pick anybody, you may discover that at the end of the day, you may end up picking people within a certain demography and you will not be able to get a representation of everybody. Let's say the people you are able to get is maybe everybody falls within the age group of 15 to 40. Then your results cannot be representative of people who falls within the age group of 0 to 14 and 41 and above. So here you do stratified sampling, where you divide the population into subgroups, maybe age 0 to 10, age 11 to 20, age 21 to 40, and so on. So you now pick randomly from each of the age group. So this is stratified sampling. Then the third type of probability sampling is systematic sampling, where every nth element from a list is used, and it is practical for large population when sampling frame exists. And for instance, well, this is used in a very large population of sampling. For the non-probability sampling, not everyone has equal chance. Not everyone has equal chance. And we have the types of probability sampling being: one, convenience. This is based on accessibility. Select whoever is easily accessible, fast, but limited in generalizability, so you must justify it carefully. For instance, if you are dealing with information about pesticide use in rural farmers, it's not everybody that has a chance. Not everybody in the community has a chance. So it has to be people who are farmers and who live in a rural area. So already it's no longer probability. You're now moving to non-probability. So not everybody has equal chance. So when you now get there too, you think of convenience, which of the farmers are more easily accessible to you? So you do convenience sampling in this way. The second type is purposive sampling. You select based on relevance. If, for instance, you are looking at a particular type of pesticide, you have to select people who are using that type of pesticide in farming. Then snowball sampling. This is where participant refers to others. In a situation where it is difficult to recruit participants, let's say you want to do studies among people who are HIV positive, because of the stigma associated with it, not so many people want to publicly declare they are HIV positive. So if you are able to recruit one person, that one person can now help you recruit others, because they will be more accessible to that one participant than you. So this is called a snowball sampling. So what are the key considerations we make while doing and sampling, and the common mistake we should avoid? When choosing a sample, consider one, size. Consider the sample size. In quantitative research, use power analysis or published guidelines. There are usually published guidelines on the sampling size. In qualitative, aim for saturation. Saturation means when new data will not yield new teams. So when you have reached that, you have reached saturation, and that sample is good enough. Representation. Does this sample reflect the entire population? Does it reflect the diversity of your population? Gaps in representation create gaps in your finding. So your sampling must be representative of every group within that population. Just like I talked about epidemiological studies in the community before, if your sampling size is within one demography alone, it is not diverse enough and cannot represent the other diversities in the population. So this is very critical, that your sampling method should be representative of all the diversity within that population. Another key consideration is feasibility and access. Can you realistically reach your sample within your time and budget? A theoretically ideal sample you can't access is useless. If you are doing the studies on insecurity in Nigeria, and you are supposed to interview the leaders of bandits or terrorist groups, if you are able to do that, that will give a very, very good credibility to your work. But the question is, can you assess them? Is it feasible for you to be able to assess them within that time frame of your work? So if you cannot assess them, then it is very useless for you to say that that will be your sampling method. Then another key consideration is your design alignment. Does it fit your method? Your sampling method must match your research design. Probability sampling for generalizable, quantitative, purposive for qualitative depth. So what are the common mistakes to avoid? Using convenience sampling without justification. For you to use convenience sampling, there must be justification for it. You don't use convenience sampling when there is no justification for it. Then using very small sample sizes. Sample too small for the statistical test you intend to use is a very, very common mistake that must be avoided. And having no explanation for the sampling method you have chosen is also a common mistake which must be avoided. You must have reasons or explanation for the sampling method you are using. So now, this is the task we are supposed to do. For the type of research you have been doing or you are currently doing, I want you to identify whether your study is quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method. Everyone here has done a research before, if you are not currently doing one. So look at the work you have done before, identify whether your work was quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method. 2, name the specific design you used or you are using, e.g. survey, phenomenology, sequential method, experimental design, and so on. 3, target population. Clearly define the target population your study is drawn from. I want you to do this and supply the answer in the comment box. Sampling method. Choose and name your sampling strategy, whether you use probability or non-probability. Written justification. Write and explain why your design and sampling approach is or was appropriate. So I'll give us 3 minutes to do this. Give us 3 minutes to do this.
Sir, are you still speaking?
I've given us 3 minutes to answer this, to do this session task.
Okay. Sorry, I kept hearing a feedback. I thought you were speaking.
Yes, we can continue while I expect our answers in the in-call messages box. I expect our answers for the last session in the in-call messages box while we try and conclude this session of today's class.
Okay, sir. Some answers are ready for me. So yeah, we can go on, sir.
Okay. Maybe we should finish with this before we move on. How do we want to do it? Yes, some are in the box.
Maybe we
I
can
think
have
maybe,
one person talk about just one
okay,
person to just speak.
okay.
Yeah, maybe can I call on Abigail John? Can you
Okay,
just talk
hi.
about the task? Yes.
Okay, good morning. From the question, I'm currently carrying on writing a scoping review on AI bias in healthcare in the African system. So from what he explained about the research design, these were my answers. From the study we've carried out, the study type is a mixed method because we both look into where we look into original research. Also, we also look into some systematic research, but we didn't include scoping review because from what I learned, you cannot include the scoping review in a scoping review. And then the second question is the study is a scoping review and our target is majorly Africa. Any context outside Africa was not considered. And then for the non-probability purpose sampling is because the goal, we're not going by statistic, at least from what I've understand. We are using like a concept. The concept is bias, data sovereignty, and yeah, I don't know if I answered correctly.
Okay, that's great. But this is based on a review paper you are writing, not an original research work.
Yes, sir, not an original research work. I just answered it based on what I'm currently working on and not
That's so
on an original research work.
beautiful.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abigail. we can have one more.
Okay.
Can I call on Christopher? Okay, sir, you want to say something?
Okay, no, go ahead.
Okay. Can I call on Christopher Kengde? Christopher, are you on the call? Mr. Christopher Kengde. Okay, so he says he's not able to talk. All right.
Okay.
So I think we can go on so that we don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we look at how to ensure quality and credibility using instrument validity and ethics. What is an instrument? An instrument is a tool used to collect data. Types, we have quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative and quantitative. In quantitative, we have questionnaires and surveys. Questionnaires and surveys. In qualitative, we have interview guides and observation checklists. Interview guides and observation checklists. So what makes a good instrument? Number one, it has to be clear. Number one, it has to be clear. Questions must be simple and unambiguous. Number two, alignment. Each question must relate to your research objectives. Each question must relate to your research objectives. Three, neutrality. You must avoid leading questions, questions that will lead people into answering in an unintended manner. Four, measurability. And this is especially so in quantitative research. Your questions must be measurable. If a question does not serve your objective, remove it. If a question does not serve your objective, remove it. Validity and reliability. Validity asks, are you measuring the right thing? Are you measuring the right thing? Are you measuring what you actually intend to measure? And types of content validity is, types of validity is one, content validity. Does the instrument cover all the dimensions of the concept? Two, construct validity. Does the instrument measure the theoretical construct accurately? Three, phase validity. On its surface, does the instrument appear to measure what it claims? Then talking about reliability. Reliability asks the question, is your measurement consistent? Is it consistent across time, raters, and conditions? The types of reliability are test, retest. Same results over time. Same instrument to the same group at two different times produce results, produce same results. Results should be similar. Internal consistency. Items measure the same concept. Internal consistency. Items measuring the same construct should correlate with the Cronbach alpha greater or equal to 0.7. Inter-rater reliability. Different observers agree. That is, two raters coding the same data should reach the same conclusion. This is reliability test. Now, I know for those of us in sciences, this might sound strange to us because we do not do validity and reliability tests this way. The way I've discussed it is how people in humanities and social sciences do their validity and reliability tests. We in the sciences do ours a little differently. But since this class is not only for science, that is why I'm bringing this up. A study can be reliable without being valid, but it cannot be valid without being reliable. So validity is very, very important. Are you measuring what you actually intend to measure? That is a very, very important question, whether in sciences or in social sciences. For qualitative studies, validity and reliability are addressed through credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. Lincoln and Guba, 1985. Techniques includes member checking, prolonged engagement, audit trails, and thick descriptions. That is for qualitative studies. So let's look at research ethics. These ethics are very, very important when carrying out research. So ethics ensures your research is conducted responsibly. If you do not carry out responsible research, no journal that wants it sought to publish your results. So what are the core principles of an ethical research? One is informed consent. Informed consent. If you are carrying out a research that requires human participants, the participants must know what they are agreeing to, the study's purpose, the procedures, the risk, and their right to withdraw before its participation begins. So this is very, very important. There must be an informed consent form that participants will fill, and this will show clearly the procedures, the purpose of the study, the risk that the participants may incur, or the risk they might be exposed to rather, and their right to withdraw. This is very important. They have the right to withdraw even before the end of the research. They must sign to this before you can use human participants. Confidentiality is also very important. Participant data must be stored securely. Use anonymization or pseudonymization. Be explicit in your methodology about how data will be protected. You can't do data or maybe HIV in a community and you begin to mention names of people. So participant data must be confidential. And that is very, very important. Another core principle is voluntary participation. No participant must be coerced to join a research. Participation must be truly voluntary. No undue incentives, and a clear right to withdraw at any point without consequence. So you should not induce people with money for them to participate in a research, and they should always retain the right to withdraw at any point within the research without any consequences to them. Another core principle is avoidance of harm. anticipate and minimize physical, psychological, and social or professional risk to participants. This includes emotional distress from sensitive questions. So no physical, emotional, or psychological harm should come to participants because they participated in your research. So what are the ethical risks we must avoid? Data misuse or unauthorized sharing, plagiarism or attribution errors, falsification, and data fabrication. These are ethical risks we must avoid. And something we must note clearly is that ethics is not just a section in your thesis or your article. Ethics is the foundation for a credible research, and it's a standard that must be applied throughout the entire research process. So ethics is not just a section you report on. It must be a standard you apply throughout your research process. AI integration. And just like we showed for literature review, you can also integrate AI to help with the research design and support. So here again, I'll say what AI can do and what AI should not be used for, and the ethical use of AI. AI can help you improve clarity of survey questions, improve clarity and language of survey questions and items, helps you suggest better structure, removing ambiguity or double barrel questions, helps you identify gaps in instruments so that it aligns instruments with research variables. It assists you in formatting. For the survey design support, it helps structuring Likert scale response options, suggesting logical questions flow and sequencing, identifying gaps or missing variables. Then for writing assistance, helping you to draft initial methodological paragraph structure, improving academic register and precision, suggesting supporting citation, which you must always verify independently. What you must never use AI for. AI should not decide your research design, should not validate your methodology, and it should not replace your academic judgment. Always verify AI outputs. Do not blindly copy AI outputs and use, and always maintain intellectual ownership. AI should enhance your thinking, but never replace it. Don't use AI to replace your thinking. Only use it to enhance your thinking. This is a practical instrument development for questionnaire and interview guide. I can share the PowerPoint with us after now so that we can look at this too, if it appeals to us. But this is more for people who use questionnaire. Questionnaire is not widely used in scientific research, even though we can't do epidemiological research without doing a questionnaire. So I'll share this with us after now if it appeals to us. So What are the deliverables I expect from us at the end of this study before the next week? Your research design and justification. To be able to name your design, explain why it is appropriate for your research question, reference methodological literature to support your choice. 2, study population and sampling. Define your target population precisely, state your sampling method, justify your sample size, and explain how participants will be recruited. 3, data collection instruments. Describe the instruments you will use, explain how they were developed or adapted, confirm alignment with research objectives. 4, validity and reliability. Explain how you will ensure the credibility of your data for quantitative, validity types and reliability statistics for qualitative, trustworthiness strategies. Ethical consideration. Address informed consent, confidentiality, voluntary participation, and avoidance and harm avoidance. State whether ethical clearance has been or will be sought. So what we have done in today's class is research design types and how to align them with your research questions, probability and non-probability sampling strategies and justification, how to develop and adapt valid bias-free data collection instruments, validity, reliability, and qualitative trustworthiness principles, core ethical principles, and how to embed them throughout your research, how to use AI tools responsibly to enhance methodological precisions. Let me leave us with this. Your methodology is where your research becomes real. It is where your ideas are tested, challenged, and validated. A strong methodology does not just support your research, it defends it. Thank you very much. So this has brought us to the end of today's session. We have had 2 sessions today. We'll now take questions and try to answer them before we depart for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Oh my God. Please, can I get thank you from the audience? Yes, can I get reactions? Thank you. Can also put in the comment section. Thank you, Prof. This was very, very insightful. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so it's time for questions now. Maybe you have a question. You thought of a question in the former class, you were not able to ask it. Sorry, in the first session, or you have a question from this session. This is your time to ask your question. So if you're not able to talk, you can type the question and I will ask it on your behalf. Or if you're able to speak, by all means, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Question time. Okay. Seems like we are clear. Okay. Mr. Elisha has a question. You can unmute your mic and speak. Ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for this session. Um, Undergraduate studies, undergraduate research focused on identifying inhibitors of alpha-protein enzyme. So, in that case, there's no population per se in that kind of study. So I don't know.
Sorry, can you take that again?
Okay, I said my undergraduate research project was focused on identifying inhibitors of alpha glucosidase enzyme. So I'm just trying to relate the concept of population and study. So that means, is it possible for certain studies to not have population?
Where did you get your
Like
enzyme from?
Okay, we use synthetic enzyme.
Okay, you use synthetic enzyme.
Yes, sir.
Give me a brief run through of your work.
Okay, basically we got synthetic enzymes. We also purchased inhibitors based on literature research, and then we screen them against. We perform inhibitory assays against the enzyme.
How many
Okay.
inhibitors did you use?
We use 6 to 7. Can't remember the exact number now.
How many inhibitors are there in all for that enzyme? Do you know?
Yeah, for the standard inhibitors usually used is the one we used was acarbose, but we screened around 7 to 8 of different inhibitors. Comparison with
what you have done there now, the inhibitors you use is the representative sample, because you have more inhibitors, but you just picked few to use. So there's no experiment without population sampling. You have done sampling there too. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you've done sampling there because you use certain number, X number of inhibitors from a total Y number of possible inhibitors. So you have done sampling there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So for that kind of study, if one wants to mention the population, what would one say? Because I understand that maybe one can say convenient sampling was used for the sampling method. For our population.
Okay. Usually, if you are reporting that, you have to tell why you picked those inhibitors particularly and not another inhibitor. And in justifying the use of that inhibitor or that group of inhibitors instead of others, you have actually answered that question. You don't need to, reporting this differs from research type to the other. So you don't necessarily need to state it in clear terms. Just like when we're doing dependent and independent variable the last time. If you remember, in sciences, we don't talk about dependent and independent variables. Is that not so?
Yes.
But we're able to prove in our last class that even though we don't talk about them, we also use them. Is that not so? Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Yes, we're able to prove in the last class that even though we do not talk about dependent and independent variables, we use them in our studies and we report them differently. So also this population thing. We don't need to I logged out a bit, but I hope you got my answer. And
Yes,
I hope
sir.
it answers the question. Thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for that answer. Do we have more questions from anybody? Okay. So, I think we don't have, do we? If you're typing your questions, can you maybe let me know that, oh, you're still typing your questions? Okay. All right. So, I think with that, we have come to the end of today's class, but I want us to take note of the deliverables for both weeks, for the sessions we've had today. They're actually very closely related. So let's work on it. I'm going to share more information on the group chat. I also wanted to say something. So if you are sending an email to the team or to the email account, since we are all learning, I think this is an opportunity to learn as well. Always include a subject. When your email does not have a subject, two things can happen. It can go to spam, and it's maybe the email can be missed like that. And also, if you don't send an email with a subject, it's just unprofessional. So when you're sending an email, always ensure that your email has a subject so that it doesn't go to spam and it's professional, since we are all attaining to be researchers. Okay. So, Prof, is there maybe any additional announcement you want to give?
I think the way we have done 2 weeks in 1 week today, if we can also do another 2 weeks in one next week, probably we'll be able to gain the time we have lost. But classes continuing depends on, sorry, let me